Hello guys, Erica Hargaton here, a certified child sleep consultant with my private practice Babog. I'm the creator of the Sleep Series, which is an online sleep program to help you on your sleep journeys with your little ones. And I'm a mum of three, so there's very little I haven't seen on the sleep front, and that's actually what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. So today I want to tell you my story and how I became a lover of sleep and maybe a little bit more aware of what's involved in sleep. And it really all stemmed from my struggle with my first child's sleep. So I'm a mum of a 10-year-old at the moment. There's no more on the way, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And my 10-year-old was the one that I really struggled with. So he was born in May 2009, and myself and my husband had only been married the previous July. So he was born less than a year after we got married. So we were very lucky to get pregnant so quickly and have him so quickly. We're thrilled. But new parents, not a clue. Now, I will say this, I had read quite a bit about prepping. I'm a real prepper, I'm an organizer, like I like to know what's going to happen. And this threw me completely. I, not a notion, because little person didn't do what the book said. Little person, isn't a robot. So it just absolutely threw me. And from birth and even from pregnancy, he was quite an unsettled baby. Like, he tried to come 5 weeks early and they ended up stopping the labour, and he ended up being born kind of 2.5, 3 weeks early. He was 6 pounds 14 ounces born, so not an overly small baby, but maybe small enough, kind of like all my other children were like 8 and 8.5 pound babies. So he was small enough. He was difficult to handle, difficult to feed. He squealed all the time from 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks were quite settled. I usually call those the real newborn 3 weeks. They're still sleepy from their journey, kind of coming into the world. But from 3 weeks, he squealed and squealed and squealed and squealed after every single feed. Just dries his knees up. He was so unsettled, and he hated being fed. Hated it. Just absolutely hated it. He didn't want to feed. And as a result, he didn't really gain very much. So I ended up not feeding him for a long period of time. I ended up cutting my breastfeeding journey short with him and switching over to bottles, but it didn't improve. He continued to squeal and squeal, and his sleep was horrendous. He didn't sleep during the day, like for any more than 45 minutes at a time, if even. And at night he was awake every hour or every 2 hours. He was just so unsettled. He never settled down. And I remember going to, the places that you turn to, like turning to my GP and turning to my public health nurse, and kind of, been told that it was a phase, that he would grow out of it, that he wasn't refluxy because he wasn't vomiting, and he was gaining, not massively, but he was gaining, he was okay. But I knew in my heart and soul that there was more to this than met the eye. I knew. But as his sleep didn't improve, the sleep deprivation for me got worse, and it had an extremely negative effect on me. Everything in my life was just shrouded in a cloud of negativity. I couldn't see the wood from the trees. I couldn't get on top of anything. In fact, I became very insular. I didn't really want to leave the house because I could barely cope with what was happening in it. I was very tearful all the time. Like, myself and my husband were fighting all the time. Like, we were a newly married couple with a new baby, like with the world ahead of us. It just was so hard. And all my relationships with everyone, friendships, parents, my mom, my dad, it was all suffering. And I was obsessed with trying to get him to sleep, but sure, nothing I was doing was working. Nothing. And I again was turning back to my public health nurse and my GP going like, please, how do I help him to sleep better? And again, it's just a phase. And I remember distinctly being told that I wasn't coping, that this was a part of parenthood and I wasn't coping. It was the worst thing that anyone could have said to me. I think I fell into a dark abyss after that. And I kept being told I needed to take antidepressants. And I didn't. I was sleep deprived. I needed to sleep. And like this was going on. Quinn was probably about 7 or 8 months old when this came to a head. And my mother came to stay. I don't live with where I'm from now, but my mum came to stay with us, and she said what opened the door to her was a statue of her daughter. Very grey, very lifeless, not me at all. And she very much, as mammies do, took over and stepped in. And she sent me to bed. And I remember I wasn't comfortable leaving him with anyone at that stage. And she sent me to bed and I slept for 12 hours. I just had to sleep. Sleep was the only thing I needed. And I got up the next morning and she said to me, Erica, there is nothing wrong with you, because there was all this chat around whether I was depressed or not. And there's nothing wrong with Quinn, only that he doesn't know how to sleep. Yes, he's refluxy, but he doesn't know how to sleep. Now, I didn't get anywhere from a reflux perspective with anyone I turned to for help, but I ended up putting him onto a specific formula and Gaviscon. Now, I'm not a medical professional, lads, so don't take any advice in regards to reflux from this video. Go to the professionals. But once I did that, he settled down enormously, hugely. So at this point, his reflux and his feeding was so much better. And my mum could see that this was the opportunity to help me. And she did. She said, I've spoken to your father and I'm staying for the next couple of weeks to help you out. And she stayed for 2 weeks. And we worked together on Quinn's sleep. She very much led me and guided me and helped me. And I'm really grateful to her for doing that. And she did for me what I now do for families, I suppose. She gave me confidence around sleep. She taught me what she knew, and she awakened a love and an understanding of sleep in me. And we worked on his sleep. It was never perfect. Child sleep evolves all the time, but we got him settled as we could. He's not a robot. They're not robots. And I never looked back. It was the best thing I ever did for me and for my little family. And I don't regret it for an instant. But when I went on to have 2 more children, because I wanted to have more kids, I really was a bit afraid that I wouldn't be able to cope with sleep deprivation again. So I read everything I could. I educated myself. You name it, it's probably back there on the shelves. I've read it. Every sleep consultant's book, kind of any doctors or pediatricians that had written books, anything that was in the paper about sleep. My husband would cut it out and bring it home with me. This is the time before iPhones, by the way. I didn't have one of these to look up stuff on, so think about that. And I really moulded the next 2 kids' sleep from birth. Kate was exceptional. I do think she had that unicorn status in her. She slept through the night from 7 weeks. She did very, very well. Patrick was a little bit harder, but he went through the night from 12, which is incredibly early. But I really put that down to me understanding their sleep, guiding it and moulding it, and kind of using what I had experienced on my first child and bringing it to the table with a greater understanding, and putting in place flexible routines that I could have a life and still have sleep with my kids. I always get messages from people when they hear this story. They're like, oh, it resonates with them. They can see it. They are experiencing it themselves. And I welcome your messages, you know, you're not alone. There is so many of us out there that are experiencing issues like this, you know, with our children's sleep, and everybody's reaction to it is different. Everybody's. And your reaction is your reaction, and whatever that might be, it's okay. And whatever you decide to do with your children's sleep, that's okay. All I'll say is, if you decide to co-sleep, do it safely. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about me, you'll find more details on my website, babogue.com. Thanks, guys.